Wife abandoned us to find herself and brags that I'll wait for her return. But later, karma hit her hard. Alright, so here's how my life flipped in a way I didn't see coming. I'm Alex, 34, and I thought I was in a pretty stable marriage with Sarah, who's 32. We met in high school, got together young, and despite the ups and downs, I figured we'd built something solid. We even have a little girl, Emma, who's 5. She's the best part of my life, hands down. Sarah and I both work full-time, grinding to make everything work, trying to give Emma a stable home. You know how it goes. Jobs, bills, the daily routine. We'd been talking for ages about doing something big as a family. We were going to put work on hold and just take off for a few months, explore the country, reconnect, spend some real quality time together. It wasn't some random fantasy either. We had a whole plan mapped out. We'd saved up enough to make it happen, and I thought we were on the same page. Both really looking forward to it. But man, was I wrong. Lately, I'd noticed Sarah seemed off. Not in an obvious way, but she was just distant. She'd zone out in the middle of conversations, stay up late scrolling on her phone, say she was stressed or tired whenever I asked her what was up. I assumed it was work, or just the general burnout from juggling everything. I mean, we'd both been doing the same grind for years now, so I didn't think too much of it. I figured once we got on this trip, away from everything, things would get back to normal. Big mistake on my part. One day I come home from work, and Emma's already at my parents' house. My folks were watching her for the afternoon since I was working late, so the house was quiet when I walked in. I dropped my stuff and headed into the kitchen, thinking maybe I'd start dinner or catch up on the bills, and there it was, a note on the kitchen counter. Just a simple piece of paper folded in half, with my name scribbled on it. No frills, nothing that screamed important. But when I saw her handwriting, my stomach dropped. I picked it up, barely breathing, because some instinct told me this was bad. The note was short, just a couple of lines, and I swear the words hit me like a punch to the gut. It read, "Alex, I need some time to figure things out. I'm sorry, but I have to do this on my own. I'll be back when I'm ready." That was it. Nothing about when she'd be back, why she was leaving, or even where she was going. She'd just gone. I can't even describe the shock. One minute I was coming home, thinking I'd be sitting down to dinner with my wife and planning our trip, and the next minute, she was gone. And it wasn't just a taking a walk to cool off type of gone. This was a full-on disappearing act like she'd planned it out. I looked around, half expecting to see her suitcases still sitting by the door, or maybe her car parked out front. But nope, her things were gone, and her car was nowhere to be seen. I just stood there, reading and rereading that note, trying to wrap my head around it. It didn't feel real. I kept thinking, there's no way she'd just walk out like this. But the note was there, in her handwriting, and the silence in the house was louder than anything. I checked her closet, hoping this was some weird joke, but I could tell she'd taken a bunch of her clothes. Not all of them, but enough to make it clear she wasn't just running out to clear her head. I called her, of course. The phone rang a few times, then went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to keep it calm, asking her to call me back so we could talk. I mean, how do you react to something like this? I didn't want to blow up on her voicemail. I just wanted answers. But after a while, when she didn't call back, I tried again. And again. Straight to voicemail every time. After a few tries, I finally gave up and called my brother Steve. He's always been the practical one, the guy who keeps his head straight when everything's a mess. I told him what happened, that Sarah was gone, and he was quiet for a second before asking me to read him the note. I did, and he let out this long sigh, like he'd seen it coming. But for me, it was like the rug had been pulled out from under my entire life. "Alex, listen to me," Steve said. "You need to lock down the accounts and protect yourself. We don't know how long she's planning to be gone, and if she took money already, she could take more." He was right. I hadn't even thought about the money yet. My mind was too scrambled. But after he said that, I couldn't ignore it. If she'd left with no warning, there was no telling what she planned to do next. I went around the house looking for anything else she might have taken. I don't know why. I guess I just needed to know the full damage. But aside from the clothes, a few personal things, and the money, she didn't take much. It was like she'd stripped down her life to just the essentials and walked out. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the last few months in my head, looking for any sign I might have missed, anything that hinted this was coming. But there was nothing. She'd acted distant, sure, but not like someone who was about to abandon her family. I kept hoping I'd wake up and find out this was some messed up dream, but the reality of it was impossible to ignore. The hardest part, though, was figuring out what to tell Emma. She was too young to understand why her mom would leave, and I didn't have an answer to give her. The next day, I picked her up from my parents' house, trying to act normal. I told her that her mom had gone on a little trip and would be back soon, even though I didn't have a clue if that was true. She didn't ask too many questions, but I could tell she was confused. And honestly, so was I. The only thing I knew for sure was that everything had changed and there was no going back. Waking up the next morning felt like being hit by a truck. For a second, I thought maybe it had all been a bad dream, but there it was. The note, still on the counter, right where I'd left it. Sarah was gone, and I had no idea when or if she'd be coming back. It didn't feel real. I had to face the fact that my wife had just walked out on our life together, on our daughter, on everything we'd built over the years. Emma woke up as cheerful as ever, totally unaware of what was going on. I plastered on a smile, trying to keep things as normal as possible. But it felt like my whole world was hanging by a thread. She asked if Mommy was still on her trip, and I nodded, keeping it vague, not really knowing how to explain it to a 5-year-old. I was barely wrapping my own head around it. After breakfast, I tried calling Sarah again, straight to voicemail, just like last night. I left another message, asking her to please just call back, to at least let me know she was safe. But something told me that she wasn't going to respond, at least not anytime soon. The silence felt deafening. I decided to reach out to her closest friend, Jen, thinking maybe she'd know something. Jen and Sarah had been friends since college, and I figured if anyone would have a clue about what was going on, it'd be her. I called Jen, trying to keep it together, but my voice cracked as I explained everything. Wait, what? She just left? Jen sounded shocked, genuinely caught off guard. I haven't heard anything about this, Alex. She didn't say a word to me about needing space or wanting to leave. Her reaction confirmed what I was afraid of. Sarah hadn't even confided in her best friend. This wasn't just some random trip. It was something she'd planned and kept hidden. Jen told me she'd try to reach out to Sarah, maybe see if she'd pick up the call. She sounded as worried as I felt, but it didn't exactly bring me any comfort. Sarah had taken off without telling anyone, without even a hint of when she'd be back. And now it was all on me to keep things together. The rest of the day was a blur of trying to act normal while feeling like my whole life had been turned upside down. I took Emma to the park, played with her like I always did, but my mind was somewhere else. Every time she laughed or asked me a question, it was like a stab to the heart. I couldn't shake the image of Sarah leaving us without a second thought, leaving me to answer questions I didn't have the answers to. That night, after Emma was asleep, I finally sat down and let myself process everything. I thought about all the times that Sarah had seemed distant over the last few months. I thought about her staying up late on her phone, her saying she felt stuck and needed to find herself. At the time, I'd thought she was just stressed. I'd offered to help, to talk it out, but she'd always brush me off. And now, looking back, I realized she must have been planning this for a while. In the quiet of the house, it hit me just how alone I felt. This wasn't some small fight we'd bounce back from. This was real, and it was ripping my life apart in a way I hadn't expected. I tried to remember what Steve had told me the night before, about locking down the accounts, protecting what was left. I'd already put holds on the joint accounts and canceled the shared credit cards, but there was still this gnawing feeling that I hadn't done enough. So I sat down, logged into our bank accounts, and took a closer look. She'd already withdrawn a chunk of our savings. Not everything, but enough to leave a serious dent. I'd worked hard to save that money, and now half of it was gone. I felt this mix of anger and betrayal boiling up inside me. I kept picturing Sarah somewhere, carefree, living her new life, while I was left picking up the pieces. I decided to check her social media, just to see if she'd posted anything, if there was any hint about where she was or what she was doing. I wasn't even sure I wanted to know, but I couldn't help myself. And there it was. A new post on her Instagram from a few hours earlier. She was on some beach, sunglasses on, with this big, carefree smile. The caption read, "Finally feeling free." I sat there, staring at that photo, feeling like I was seeing a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah I thought I knew. She was out there, living her best life or whatever, while I was at home, trying to explain to our daughter why her mom wasn't around. The comments were full of her friends hyping her up, saying things like, "You deserve it, girl," and "living your truth." It felt like I was the only one seeing the full picture, that she just walked away from her family. I took a screenshot and sent it to Steve. He replied almost immediately, calling me to ask if I was okay. I wasn't, not even close, but I told him I was handling it. What else was I supposed to say? I wasn't going to break down on the phone, even though that's exactly how I felt. Steve told me I needed to think about what my next steps were, that I couldn't just wait around for her to decide if she wanted to come back. And he was right. I couldn't keep pretending like this was temporary, like she'd just gone off on a quick trip and would be back any day now. She'd made her choice, and now I had to figure out how to move forward. But it was easier said than done. The next few days, I kept going through the motions, taking care of Emma, going to work, pretending everything was normal when it was anything but. I was barely holding it together, and every time I looked at Emma, I felt this crushing weight of responsibility. I'd always pictured us as a family, working through things together, but now it was just me and her. I had no idea how to explain any of this to her, and I didn't even know if I could. One night, after I'd put Emma to bed, I sat down and just let myself feel it. The anger, the sadness, the betrayal. I thought about all the years we'd spent building a life together, all the sacrifices we'd made, and now it was like none of it mattered to her. She was out there, living free, and I was left here, alone, trying to pick up the pieces for our daughter. And that's when I realized that I couldn't keep waiting around for her to decide what she wanted. Sarah had made her choice, and it didn't include me or Emma. It hurt like hell, but I knew that I had to start focusing on what was best for us. I wasn't going to let her keep us in limbo, waiting for her to figure out if we were worth coming back for. The next day, I called a lawyer. I didn't know if I was ready to file for divorce, but I needed to know my options. I needed to understand what I could do to protect myself and Emma. I felt like I was finally taking a step forward, even if it was a small one. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the one I had now, and I was going to do whatever I had to do to make it work for us. After that call to the lawyer, I thought things might start getting clearer, that maybe I'd get a sense of control, but if anything, it just made me realize how far gone Sarah really was. This wasn't just a temporary thing, she'd made her choice, and I was left to deal with the fallout. The lawyer had explained my options, mostly just legal terms that felt way over my head, but the main point stuck. If Sarah didn't come back, I needed to prepare for a possible divorce. But here's the thing. There were still so many unanswered questions buzzing around in my head, keeping me up at night. Where was she? What was she even doing? I mean, yeah, she'd posted that one Instagram pic of herself on the beach, all smiles, living her so-called best life. But that didn't tell me why she'd left or how long she planned to be gone. So one night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into Sarah's old email account. Look, I know it sounds bad, but I was desperate. I needed answers, and she wasn't giving me any, so this felt like my only option. Besides, I knew she barely used that email except for junk mail and random subscriptions. I figured if there was any clue, it'd be there. The inbox was pretty much what I expected, tons of spam, newsletters, promotions. But as I was scrolling through, I noticed a few emails that stood out. They were from a dating app, notifications about messages she'd received. My heart sank as I opened one. It was from some guy named Mike, and the conversation wasn't just friendly. She'd been chatting with him for weeks, maybe longer. There were more messages from other guys too, all over the last few months. I felt sick reading through them, seeing how she'd been living this double life. Here I was, thinking we were just a regular couple, planning a big trip to reconnect, and she'd been out there, building connections with complete strangers. And I couldn't ignore the dates on those messages. They lined up perfectly with the times she'd seemed stressed or needed a night out with friends. As if that wasn't bad enough, I kept digging. One of the emails had a link to a shared photo album on her account. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. The photos were all recent. Her at the beach, her at a fancy bar, her with some guy's arm around her shoulders. It was like looking at a stranger. This wasn't the Sarah I knew, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. She was someone else entirely, someone who could walk out on her family without a second thought. I shut the laptop and just sat there, trying to process everything. I felt betrayed, humiliated, angry. It was all mixed together in this boiling mess that I couldn't control. Part of me wanted to call her, scream at her, demand answers. But I knew it'd be pointless. She'd made her choice, and no amount of yelling was going to change that. The next morning, I tried to act normal for Emma's sake. She still didn't know the details, thank God, and I didn't want her to pick up on my anger or confusion. But every time she asked about her mom, every innocent question, every look of hope on her face, it broke me a little more. How was I supposed to explain to her that her mom had chosen a completely different life? One that didn't include us? Steve called me later that day, just to check in. I hadn't told him about what I'd found, mostly because I was embarrassed. It felt like I'd been duped, like I was the last person to realize what was going on. But Steve could tell something was off, so eventually, I just let it spill. I told him about the dating app, the photos, everything. He was silent for a moment before he finally said, "Alex, you didn't deserve any of this, none of it. She's the one who messed up, not you." It felt good to hear that, but it didn't exactly solve anything. I still had to figure out what to do next. The lawyer had mentioned that if Sarah didn't come back, I could pursue a divorce for abandonment, but the thought of actually ending things that way was heavy. I mean, I never thought I'd be in this position. We'd built a life together, made promises, had a kid, and now it was all slipping through my fingers. That night, I lay awake, running through a million scenarios in my head. What if I confronted her about everything I'd found? What if I just filed for divorce and got it over with? But with every option, I kept coming back to Emma. She was the one I had to think about, the one who deserved stability in her life. I wasn't going to let Sarah's mess ruin Emma's childhood. The next morning, I decided to take Emma to the park. She deserved a day where things felt normal, even if it was just for a few hours. Watching her play, laughing and running around like everything was fine, made me realize just how much I needed to be strong for her. She was my reason for pushing forward, even if the rest of my life felt like it was falling apart. At one point, Emma stopped playing and ran over to me. She looked up at me, her big, innocent eyes filled with a question I knew was coming. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" I took a deep breath, feeling that familiar pang of sadness mixed with frustration. I kneeled down, trying to look as calm as possible. "I don't know, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "But I promise I'll always be here, okay?" She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't satisfied with that answer. She just hugged me, holding on tight, and I hugged her back, hoping that somehow I could protect her from the reality of everything that was happening. Later that evening, I finally made up my mind. I couldn't keep living in limbo, waiting around for Sarah to decide if we were worth coming back to. I was going to take the next steps, whatever that meant, to protect Emma and myself. Whether that was officially filing for divorce or just moving on emotionally, I didn't know yet. But I couldn't keep living like this, trapped between what my life had been and what it had become. As I sat there, thinking about the future, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to build something new. A life where Emma and I were happy, even if it was just the two of us. Thanksgiving was coming up fast, and honestly, I didn't know how to handle it. The holidays are a big deal in my family. We always get together, eat way too much, and talk about everything going on in our lives. This year was going to be different, though. Everyone knew Sarah was gone, but they didn't know the full story. I hadn't told anyone about the dating app, the random guys, or the beach photos, and I didn't plan to. It was too humiliating. And besides, I didn't want everyone's pity. I just wanted to get through the day without falling apart. I decided to bring Emma to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. She'd been asking about her mom, and every time, I just told her that Sarah was still on her trip, and that it was just the two of us right now. She seemed to accept it, but I could tell she missed Sarah. And that crushed me because I couldn't make any promises that her mom would be back. Heck, I didn't even know if I wanted her back at this point. The morning of Thanksgiving, as I'm getting Emma dressed and trying to keep my own nerves in check, I get a text from Sarah. I hadn't heard from her since she left, so seeing her name pop up made my stomach drop. All it said was, "I'd like to come by and see Emma today." Just like that. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what she'd done, just a casual text, as if we were still on normal terms. I stared at my phone, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to say no, to tell her she couldn't just pop in whenever it was convenient for her. But Emma was 5, and she didn't deserve to be hurt any more than she already was. I texted back, "We'll be at my parents' place. You can come by if you want, but don't expect everything to be normal." She replied with a simple, "Okay," and that was it. When we got to my parents' house, everything was set up like usual. My mom was bustling around in the kitchen, and my dad was sitting in his favorite chair, watching the parade with my brother Steve. They greeted me with sympathetic smiles, but they didn't say anything. They'd known me long enough to know that pushing me to talk wasn't going to help. I could tell my mom was worried, though. She kept glancing at me with that look she gets when she wants to fix things, even though she can't. Emma was playing with her cousins when Sarah finally showed up. She walked in like nothing had happened, dressed up, smiling, looking like she'd just come back from a fun weekend trip instead of a month-long disappearance. She made a beeline for Emma, scooping her up in a big hug, and Emma's face lit up. I felt this mix of anger and relief. Angry because she was acting like everything was fine, and relieved because at least Emma was happy, if only for a little while. The whole family was watching, and the silence was thick. My mom broke it by politely offering Sarah a drink, which she accepted, and they all sat down around the table. I could tell everyone was waiting for someone to say something, to address the elephant in the room. But Sarah acted like she was just another guest, chatting away about her trip and how nice it was to see everyone. At one point, I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned over and said quietly, "So, that's it? You're just going to act like nothing happened?" She glanced at me, barely fazed, and said, "Alex, I needed this. I needed time to figure things out." She said it so calmly, like she was explaining why she'd taken a longer than expected coffee break, not why she'd abandoned her family. I couldn't keep my voice down. "Figure things out? You walked out on Emma and me without a word. You've been gone for weeks, and now you just show up for Thanksgiving like everything's fine?" Everyone went silent, even the kids. Sarah looked uncomfortable for the first time, shifting in her seat, but she kept her calm. "I'm here now, aren't I? I wanted to be here for Emma, to show her I still care." Steve was glaring at her, and I could see the disappointment in my parents' eyes. But Sarah just brushed it off, reaching for Emma again and trying to distract her with talk about her adventures. I realized she wasn't going to own up to anything. She wasn't going to apologize or explain. To her, this was all just a minor hiccup in her life, something she could sweep under the rug. The rest of the meal was tense. Every time Sarah tried to make small talk, someone would either ignore her or give a short answer. She tried laughing it off, but it was clear she knew she wasn't welcome. After dessert, she finally stood up and said she had to go, that she had other plans. Emma looked disappointed, but she hugged her mom and asked when she'd see her again. Sarah glanced at me, and for a second, it looked like she might actually say something meaningful. But all she said was, "Soon, sweetie, I'll be back soon." And just like that, she walked out, leaving the mess behind her once again. After she left, my mom pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I wanted to say yes, to reassure her, but I couldn't. I was angry, hurt, and feeling like I'd just watched my life unravel in real time. My dad patted me on the back, his way of saying he was there for me, even if he didn't know what to say. On the drive home, Emma was quiet. She didn't say much, just stared out the window with this sad look on her face. I tried to cheer her up, pointing out holiday lights and talking about how we decorate our place soon, but she barely responded. When we got home, she went straight to her room without a word. I sat alone in the living room, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. Thanksgiving was supposed to be a time for family, for feeling grateful, but all I felt was empty. Sarah had come in, messed everything up, and left again, leaving me to deal with the aftermath. I knew then that this was going to be the new normal, me holding everything together, while she flitted in and out whenever it suited her. I was done. Done waiting, done hoping she'd come around, done pretending everything would be okay. I didn't know exactly what my next move would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I was going to build a life for Emma and me, and it wouldn't include Sarah's half-hearted appearances. We deserved better than that. After Thanksgiving, I felt different, like something had finally snapped into place. I wasn't angry anymore, not like I'd been when Sarah first left. I was more resigned, maybe even a little relieved. She'd shown me exactly who she was, a woman who could walk away from her family, turn up when it suited her, and then leave without a second thought. It was like watching a stranger move through my life, and I was done letting her come and go like that. I'd spent enough time trying to make sense of it, enough nights lying awake wondering why. Now it was time to move on and focus on Emma and me. The days turned into weeks, and I started settling into our new normal. I found a good rhythm for Emma and me. We'd have dinner together every night, make her favorite foods, do story time before bed. I wanted her to feel safe, to know that I was here no matter what. My family was around a lot more too, especially Steve, who'd stop by just to hang out or help me fix things around the house. It was simple, but it felt good, like we were building something steady, even if it was just the two of us now. Then, right as I was getting used to this, Sarah showed up again. I was at work when she texted, saying she needed to talk, and asked if I could meet her that night. No explanation, no warning, just another demand for my time. I was tempted to ignore her, but a part of me was curious. What was she going to say? Was this just another visit, or did she have some other excuse lined up? So that night, I met her at a small coffee shop. She was already sitting there when I walked in, looking, well, not great. She was wearing her usual, "I've got it all together" outfit, but I could tell something was off. She looked tired, more than I'd ever seen her, and there was this unease about her that I hadn't noticed before. She barely waited for me to sit down before she launched into it. "Alex, I made a mistake. I thought I could find myself or whatever, but it turns out that was Not what I expected. I just sat there listening, letting her talk. She went on about how things hadn't gone as planned, how she'd lost touch with some of her friends she'd been with, how life wasn't as easy as she'd thought it'd be on her own. Apparently, one of the guys she'd been seeing had swindled her out of money, promising to invest it or something, and now she was in financial trouble. The whole situation sounded like some ridiculous rom-com plot gone wrong, but here it was, real life. Finally, she got to the point. I was thinking, maybe I could come back, just until I get back on my feet. She said it so casually, as if she hadn't abandoned me and Emma, as if she hadn't completely dismantled our lives for her own adventure. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. So let me get this straight, I said, looking her right in the eyes. You left us to go find yourself, you got involved with some guy who scammed you, and now you're back because you need a place to crash? She flinched, but she tried to play it off. It's not like that, Alex. I just thought maybe we could work through this. I want to make things right with you and Emma. I shook my head, feeling this strange sense of calm wash over me. You want to make things right? Sarah, you walked out without a second thought. You left me to explain to our daughter why her mom wasn't around. You show up on Thanksgiving, act like nothing happened, and now you want to come back because you're broke? She looked down, clearly not expecting me to be this direct. She probably thought I'd just cave in, that I'd let her back in like it was nothing. But I couldn't do that. Not for her, not after everything. I'm sorry, Sarah, I said, not feeling sorry at all. Emma and I have been doing fine on our own. We've moved on, or at least started to. I don't think it's fair to her, or to me, to let you come back just because things didn't go the way you planned. She tried to argue, saying how she'd changed, how she was ready to be a family again, but I could see through it. She hadn't changed. She was just facing the consequences of her actions, and now she wanted an easy way out. But life doesn't work like that. As I stood up to leave, she grabbed my arm. Alex, please, don't do this. I'm begging you. I looked at her hand on my arm, feeling a strange sense of closure. Sarah, you left. And in doing that, you made your choice. I have to do what's best for Emma now, and that means not letting her get hurt again. I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It was like a weight had finally been lifted. I'd spent so much time worrying about what I'd done wrong, why she'd left, if there was any way to fix it. But in that moment, I realized that sometimes people make choices you can't control, and all you can do is move forward. Later that night, I called Steve and told him everything. He let out a low whistle and laughed a little. Man, I knew she'd come crawling back eventually. She just didn't realize she'd already burned all her bridges. That pretty much summed it up. She'd burned her bridges with me, and now she was realizing there was no going back. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt relieved. Relieved that I could finally close that chapter and focus on what really mattered. Building a life for Emma and me, one where we could both feel safe and loved. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a change in myself. I wasn't angry or bitter anymore. I felt like I'd finally let go of all the weight, all the questions. Emma and I were okay, really okay, and that was enough for me. It turns out karma has a funny way of working itself out. Sarah had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. And as much as she wanted to come back, she couldn't, not anymore. So, there you have it. Life doesn't always go the way you plan, and sometimes people let you down in ways you can't predict. But in the end, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and Emma and I, we're going to be just fine.